This is Inside D.C. on Brownfield, where we break down how the policy decisions made in Washington can impact your farming operation. From crop insurance to conservation and trade, ag policy matters. Now, here's your host, Carah Hart.
Welcome to Inside D.C. Joining us is Richard Gupton with the Ag Retailers Association. We're going to be talking about the EPA's recent decision to allow 3 over-the-top Dicamba products to be used for the next 2 growing seasons. Richard, thanks for joining us today on this episode of Inside D.C.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, so what's the Ag Retailers' take on EPA's decision?
We're excited about it, and it's just in time. Hopefully it's in time for the growing season. Things were delayed. We had submitted a letter late last year urging them to make that decision. And, then we had the government shutdown. I think that probably had a big impact on decision-making, even though the EPA's Office of Pesticide Program still had some funding to operate. And they're having to do their due diligence because of all the litigation that's gone on, like the federal court in Arizona where they had to vacate the labels. There was also a delay to make sure they get it right. So we're pleased they made the decision. The next step, though, is every state for using this product also has to approve the registration. It's not a one-step process. It's a multi-step or 2-step process. So we'll hopefully the states can expedite their approval of these products. So that'll be a challenge, and also making sure that the farmers or commercial applicators and private applicators, our members or ag retailers utilize commercial applicators, are trained on the products, the registrants that have training materials for this. So, and even the private applicators, the farmer will have to do that as well to make sure this product is following the label and following the law.
Well, we've talked to some in the cotton world, and it seems like cotton farmers are really psyched about having this technology and being able to use it, and it sounds like it was a just-in-time scenario for them, and I would assume for soybeans it's probably a very similar situation. I've got so many questions based off of what we just talked about. There is so much to dive into here, and I don't want to get too lost into the weeds, but the state pieces... it just kind of goes to show how many processes go into approvals, right, of these products and being able to use them, at the farm level. We've seen Minnesota and Illinois both come out for sure and issue their own state restrictions. Are you expecting other states like South Dakota? I reached out to South Dakota and they didn't have anything for me yet. Do you think we'll see some more states pop up with state restrictions that have in the past?
Yeah, that could be, but I think this time around, I think the EPA tried to coordinate as best possible with all these states, and there's a fairly long list of whether it's the weather-related issues, the buffers. You now got part of the components in Endangered Species Act, part of the mitigation labels as well. So I think, and they've changed the amount of times you can use this during the season with the 2 passes and in the quantity, right? So I think all of those things took input from the states. So hopefully that's not the case. We need some kind of consistency from state to state as how these products are used. But the training needs to take place as part of the requirement, and we want to make sure these products remain in use. So the next 2 years are going to be important for the industry to use the products properly. And why the soybean and cotton farmers are excited is because invasive weeds are a serious problem. It cuts down yields. It hurts them in the pocketbook. And so hopefully this product of over-the-top needed during the growing season can help them, because they're facing a lot of uncertainty right now and economic challenges. So this product is essential for them to have moving forward, and probably one of the most cost-effective ones for farmers. And we're glad EPA again finally made the decision.
Let's talk a little bit more about those new restrictions that EPA has in place with the recent round of approval that it gave. You've mentioned a few of them. The application rates cut in half, volatility reduction agents doubled. And there are other things too, obviously stricter temperature restrictions. And then growers, of course, have to meet certain amount of runoff and erosion mitigation points to apply the products. Were there any parts of these stricter guidelines that really stood out to ARA as like, whoa, like this is next level, really getting serious about making sure that we're doing what we need to do and the product doesn't move?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously concerns because there's a lot of restrictions put in place in this, but the alternative at this point would be no product at all if they didn't approve the registration. So our members will be able to navigate it, working with growers and applying the product. Again, it's hard to predict the weather, and so some of those things will be a challenges how those things are interpreted too when you look at the label and applying a product. The buffers are fairly robust buffer zones in place as well. And again, this is one of the new label from Dicamba, where you're doing with the ES Endangered Species Act mitigation measures. So all of those are kind of complicate things when you're applying product. But our members are trained professionals. They get and certified applicators. They're there to work on behalf of the growers and prepared to do what's necessary to follow the label, but also make sure they have products that can deal with these invasive weeds.
So registrants are holding trainings for farmers and applicators, I think, as they have in recent years, to ensure that they understand the rules of the road, if you will. Do you think that's enough to help applicators be able to comply?
Well, in the short term, it's going to have to be, right? But I think it is. I think given the last several years of the required training with Dicamba in general, with these adjustments, that they've gotten used to it. Farmers have gotten used to having to go through this training. Commercial applicators as well. So I think they're doing their due diligence to get prepared. But again, it won't be easy. But again, I think the industry will navigate this issue the right way. Again, making sure the products used not only protect the environment, but also make sure they protect the farmer's pocketbook, and making sure they're dealing with these weed issues, and again maximize their yields and profits during some fairly uncertain economic challenges.
Richard, there are 3 products that farmers can use for over-the-top dicamba: Ingenia and Tavium. Those are 2 products that I think are pretty familiar to growers. And then Bayer has a new product that replaced XtendiMax. Is that Striax? Is that how you pronounce that, Striax?
I believe so. There's all different kinds of names, and they change every year. So we'll go with that.
Have you noticed any changes between XtendiMax and Striax? Have you taken a closer look at the differences on that?
I haven't. Again, most of the training and the label mitigations will be similar between all those products, but there are alternatives for the farmer to choose from. And that's the thing, making sure that this over-the-top dicamba registration is approved. It gives a farmer more choices using modern ag technologies to deal with these kind of pest threats, weed threats, and that's important. They need to have more options available to deal with this moving forward, and not less.
So the EPA also said after 2 seasons they'll be reviewing some data on the real world, like performance of how things went, incident reports, environmental monitoring before they issue any additional approvals. Has EPA talked to the ag retailers about what that success looks like what that benchmark is?
We have not. They were pretty tight-lipped when it's under a registration review. They have open comment periods, and so we submitted comments during that process. But once that's kind of under a tight review, they're reluctant to share any information. Now that the label has been completed and the registration is done, we will have those conversations with them. I think there'll be lessons learned from this upcoming season to see what works, what may not work, and try to make adjustments while still, doing everything to mitigate spray drift, volatility, and keeping it on the farm for the applications, but also make sure we can protect the long-term use of this product. So they'll be collecting that data, working with our members and farmers as we move forward.
Agencies also said that they can adjust restrictions or revoke approvals if risks aren't being controlled in these 2 seasons. It seems like they're pretty serious about enforcement of that. How serious do you take those comments?
I take them at their word pretty seriously. Again, this is given the federal litigation, everything's going on. They're going to be watching closely. And again, there's kind of a cooperative federalism approach. So it's not only EPA, it's the state regulators. So they'll be looking at that closely. And again, you have the ESA component as well. So it adds a next level of complication. All we ask is if there's by court or by EPA some kind of effort to vacate the registration, which we don't anticipate, but if that takes place, that they allow for existing stocks to be used, because that would, if they halted it during this current season after they've approved it, it would just create even more disruption to the marketplace. So they do have an authority under the existing stocks provisions, which is what they did when it was middle of the season several years ago with the Arizona Federal Court. They allowed for existing stocks to continue to be used, and so that's what we would recommend they do, and then kind of reset and relook at a new label going into next year if that's the case. We're hopeful that this 2-year registration will remain in place, and that kind of worst case scenario is not going to take place.
You said so additional litigation is always possible, given what history has shown, I guess.
It's there's a lot of lawyers. I am a lawyer, and there's a lot of them in the U.S. and a lot of litigation. So I anticipate some lawsuits potentially from this. I think that's why they took so long and put the I guess probably more stringent standards for the mitigation measures on this current label to try to make it as litigation proof as possible. But we'll see. But a lawyer can always find a court, venue shopping, and like I said, Dicamba is barely used, or if at all, in Arizona. But they chose that federal court because they thought they'd have the greatest chance of success.
Well, given what history has shown us and what we've seen now, and knowing what we know about, if this product does stay available for the 2 growing seasons, and that, it comes and goes, and we're all fine with farmers applying it and applicators applying it. What do you think the future is for this product?
What's going to, again, it'll be all the data collected over the next few years, but the future is going to depend on the farmer and their success. They're struggling right now. There's tough economic times. This is the most cost-effective product available for them over the top to deal with these invasive weeds. And so, and it can be done in an environmentally sustainable and safe way. And so we look forward to working with EPA, the state regulators, and our members working closely with the growers to make sure these important tools like the over-the-top Dicamba are protected for future use.
You'd mentioned earlier, and I don't want to, I'm sure if the folks out there watching, tuning in probably picked up on this, and I don't have to bring it back up, but these labels that are approved, or the Dicamba label, is it 1 or is it 3 separate?
There's 3 separate labels.
So the 3 labels that are separate, those are ESA compliant. It went through the process at EPA to comply with the Endangered Species Act. And how many herbicides have done that since the ESA guidelines have gone into effect, Richard?
Yeah, just a handful. So there's not a lot of products that have been registered under the new ESA label to date. They're slowly coming out like this for Dicamba. But over the next several years, whether it's herbicides or insecticides or fungicides or other products, all of them will be required under have the ESA label mitigation measures under what they call the Master Settlement Agreement, and so there'll have to be consultation with the National Marine Fisheries, Fish and Wildlife Service, and being compliant with that. So we've been working closely with EPA. With state regulators, just was visiting them actually the other day. So extension agents as well. So there's going to be all parties that are part of this need to be part of the solution to educate applicators and farmers on this new component of it. And so ARAs work with CropLife America, with CPDA, Certified Crop Advisors as well, on compliance materials, education training materials that can help with our members. So that's something we pushed out. So not only our members are aware of it, but they can help make their farmer customers aware of it as well.
Do you think an ESA compliant label is strong enough to withhold any court challenges, any legal challenges? Does it add any strength to that? Does that make sense what I'm trying to ask? I don't know if I'm clearly asking it.
I think it should. Again, I think just Dicamba will be
protection there, if you will.
Yeah, well, I think, again, just given what's going on with Dicamba the last several years, there's probably going to be some type of litigation no matter what. But again, EPA has been working with all stakeholders to make sure the ESA, Endangered Species Act component, is workable, and it serves the goal of protecting the species, making sure there's awareness of it. And the thing is, farmers are conservationists. They want to protect the environment. They want to protect human health and protect species in the water. And so if you start out with that as the goal and kind of walk through the mitigation measures that EPA is requiring, a lot of that they are recognizing what farmers are already doing. If they've signed up for a USDA conservation program or other measures, they're probably already doing all those key things to protect these species. The bigger thing is there's some record keeping or things they got to make sure that they're keeping track of. And a commercial applicator has to keep records as well, but it goes from first looking at the decision tree about what the product is, going to EPA's website, what's called Bulletins Live 2, where you can pull up the product and see if there's a pesticide use limitation area and what restrictions there are, and then just keeping those records in place to show that you're complying with the new ESA components.
Richard, thanks for taking my questions. We're going to enter into our rapid fire question segment. So these are fun little, what I'd like to think is quick answer questions, and I hope that's the case. I wondered with the EPA, what do you see as the single biggest compliance headache ag retailers face from the EPA right now?
From EPA in general, just Office of Pesticide Programs on pesticides?
Oh, well, I mean, you're getting specific there. I think probably pesticide programs, given our topic today.
Yeah, it's the biggest thing we've talked about is covering it is making sure that they're factoring in the Endangered Species Act, because that goes beyond just EPA with these other agencies, and it also goes beyond the FIFRA, the Federal Insecticide Rodenticide Act. It goes, that deals with pesticide registrations and use. It deals with Endangered Species Act. So there's a whole other federal law that they have to be aware of related to compliance. So that's the biggest challenge, I think, and the concern for our members in the industry. So again, we've been working with the other national associations and with state agribusiness associations to make sure we're prepared and our industry's prepared as these new labels move forward.
In general, with the EPA, I guess, and crop protection products, is the regulatory burden getting lighter, heavier, or just more complicated?
Probably all the above. Yes, yes, and yes. So it's can get complicated. I know EPA Administrator Zeldin's trying to streamline the process because it takes up to 15 years and tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars to get a new product launched. So, and that's a kind of a barrier to entry for these companies to want to invest in these new tools for agriculture. So, with all the litigation we talked about, and I view as misinformation for products like glyphosate or even Dicamba, where there was a lot of concerns over Dicamba those first years of use. But, you hear the complaints, but you never hear the follow-up enforcement actions or investigations about what was real and was not. And, you add the MAHA movement, Make America Healthy Again movement component, and misinformation there. I don't know if you saw the press event down in Florida. We're dealing with bread. They're citing parts per billion for glyphosate. With the science today, you can detect about any molecule in anything, and it's well beyond what they were citing the EPA's safety standards, their threshold standards of parts per million, as far as adversely impacting public health or human health. And so we're having to combat that. So it's not only a public media campaign and effort, but also making sure lawmakers don't have knee-jerk reactions. We're seeing coming in states is to ban products as a knee-jerk reaction or make it overly restrictive where it can't even be used. And how does that impact human health? Well, you need pesticide products to deal with invasive species that could impact human health, whether that's mosquito control, right? For things, mosquito bites can carry disease that could severely adverse human health, but those are pesticides. Those are products that are approved by the EPA, and so we're worried that there's a knee-jerk reaction from regulators, from states to ban products when the science is not there, and at the end of the day, it'll increase food costs. Potentially increase farmers' costs and have them run out of business, and adversely impact human health. So all of those things should be concern for the industry and people's communities.
Man, I'm asking some really good short answer questions, aren't I?
You are. So, well, that was kind of a loaded question that you asked.
Man, sorry about that. I wondered, is there such, and I know you do a lot of reading in your job, understanding everything that comes out from the EPA, is there such a thing as a short EPA document of what they issue?
No, we're talking about Washington, D.C. here in a federal bureaucracy, so there's nothing short ever issued. The only thing that's short that issues are press releases.
And even sometimes those can be a little long, to be honest with you, as someone that looks at press releases and takes those nuggets.
That's exactly right.
Is the industry moving toward Dicamba alternatives, over-the-top Dicamba alternatives?
Well, I mean, obviously, because of the late decision, I think some have already probably prepared for that as well. So there'll be other options available for farmers if they want to go that route. So, yeah, absolutely. I am a lawyer, like I said, and advocate on behalf of our members, not an agronomist or a certified crop advisor. But, yeah, there is my understanding there will be alternative products available that they can just talk to their local farm supply dealer and look at the options. And then it really comes down to, again, working with their trusted advisor, the certified crop advisor, and making sure they're using the right product for the right needs of that crop, and depending on where they're located. So those are things that are locally based decisions made by the farmer and the retailer.
If you had 3 minutes with the EPA administrator, what would you talk about? What would you, I guess, ask him?
One, thank him for their efforts to make sure there's not a ban of the internal combustion engine. That would be one, and their efforts on the making sure it's all of the above, because you do need for farm equipment and trucks to move on diesel fuel, so that's important. Thank them for also to provide the clarity on the waters of the U.S., the WOTUS issue and what's in navigable water. That has a big impact with the ag community. Also thank them for they've had staff shortages at EPA, but he's reallocated resources to take scientists and repurpose them to offset pesticide programs to make sure they're reforming that process and making sure that products can be reviewed and approved, hopefully in a timely way. But some type of decisions. Those are the main things, and making sure they're heavily engaged with stakeholders like ag retailers and farm supply dealers and growers in the ag community, which I think they have been doing since this last year, as they make any decision that directly impacts their business operations, production agriculture, or the rural communities.
That concludes the rapid response segment, and thanks for taking a little bit more time to answer some of those, because I think a lot of those questions maybe others might have too. Finally, to wrap this up, Richard, part of Inside D.C. is really making sure that we just connect farmers with what's happening in D.C. and help them understand why ag policy matters. In your opinion, what would you tell farmers as to why issues like this matter, or ag policy in general, to the farmer rancher?
Yeah. Well, it's important to be engaged in your trade association. Whether for us as ag retailers, we have supplier members as well. But farmers, be engaged with American Farm Bureau or American Soybean Association, cotton, any commodity. Because if you're not there, you're not at the table with lawmakers, and there's less and less farmers or somebody that's come from on the farm that's in Congress today. Your voice is not going to be heard. And I can tell you, there's a lot of activist groups that want to ban all pesticides or other products that help make their job successful in production agriculture. That's going to have their voice. They're when I'm up there on meeting with offices or up on the hallways of Congress, those groups that are not friends to the industry are up there advocating. And that's what's part of America, right? You have your voice to speak up, but we as an industry need to speak up and making sure our voices are heard, why it's important these tools like Dicamba are important for production, agriculture, modern ag technologies.
Richard, thanks again for joining us, and thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Inside D.C. We've been visiting with Richard Gupton with the Ag Retailers Association, and I'm your host, Carah Hart, on Brownfield.